Honestly, Thomas, you're just a loser. Always have been. Content to shuffle papers in your little office while real men are out there building empires. And frankly, Cassandra paused, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper designed to carry across the crowded reception hall. The truth is, you're not even the father of our children. My sons, my beautiful, brilliant boys, inherited their intelligence, their drive, their very essence from their real father. Not from you. We both know it. My name is Thomas Albright, 49 years old, and for the past 2 decades, I have been a senior research scientist in the field of theoretical physics, a profession that demands a meticulous attention to detail, a rigorous pursuit of empirical truth, and an almost pathological aversion to unsubstantiated claims. Cassandra's pronouncement, delivered with a smug, triumphant finality at her sister's lavish wedding reception, was the culmination of years of casual cruelty, of thinly veiled contempt, and, as I now understood with a chilling clarity, of a carefully constructed campaign of psychological and emotional warfare designed to systematically dismantle my sense of self-worth. It was also, I noted with a dispassionate, almost academic interest, a wildly inaccurate statement of biological fact. The reception hall, a glittering testament to my sister-in-law's social ambitions, was filled with several hundred of my wife's extended family, our mutual friends, and numerous professional acquaintances. Their conversation, a low hum of polite chatter, suddenly died, replaced by a stunned, horrified silence. All eyes, it seemed, were fixed on me, the supposed loser, the man who had just been publicly and quite spectacularly cuckolded and delegitimized by his own wife. My 2 sons, David, a thoughtful, quiet 14-year-old, and Michael, a boisterous, curious 11-year-old, both of whom I adored with every fiber of my being, stood beside me, their faces pale, their eyes wide with a mixture of confusion, disbelief, and a dawning, terrible hurt. My heart, which had been beating with the slow, steady rhythm of a man resigned to enduring another tedious family gathering, gave a sudden, sharp wrench. This was her true cruelty, using our children, our innocent, unsuspecting boys, as weapons in her relentless campaign to diminish and humiliate me. I placed a reassuring hand on David's shoulder, then on Michael's head, my own expression, I hoped, remaining impassive, a mask of calm scientific detachment. Arguing with Cassandra in this state, in this public forum, was as futile as trying to prove the existence of dark matter to a flat earther. Her preferred currency was drama, her preferred medium, public spectacle. But I had my own preferred currency, verifiable data, and my own preferred medium, meticulously compiled, legally unassailable, scientific truth. For years, Cassandra had been subtly, and not so subtly, chipping away at my confidence and my sense of belonging in her world. My profession, the rigorous pursuit of abstract mathematical truths in the quiet solitude of a university lab, she had always dismissed as pointless, unambitious, unsexy. Her own career, as a self-proclaimed lifestyle guru and social media influencer, was, by contrast, a whirlwind of manufactured glamour, of endless self-promotion, of carefully curated public performances. My quiet contributions to our comfortable life, my meticulous management of our finances, my steady, unshakable presence as a father to our sons. These were all, in her eyes, invisible, irrelevant. What Cassandra, in her arrogant, self-serving certitude, did not know, what she had consistently and spectacularly underestimated, was that I, the loser, the boring physicist, was not, in fact, oblivious. I had been observing. I had been analyzing. I had been collecting data. For the past 2 years, ever since the quiet, gnawing suspicion that something was deeply, fundamentally, amiss in our carefully constructed life had begun to trouble the elegant symmetries of my world, I had, with the help of my astute and entirely discreet solicitor, Alastair Finch, been engaged in my own quiet, forensic investigation. An investigation that, just 3 days prior, had concluded with a series of utterly definitive and, for Cassandra, profoundly devastating findings. The details of her prolonged, clandestine affair with Julian Thorne, a charlatan whose smooth pronouncements on personal empowerment and manifesting abundance were matched only by his profound and persistent capacity for defrauding vulnerable women. The systematic diversion of marital assets to his various offshore accounts, a pattern of financial malfeasance that Alastair had deemed criminal in all but formal prosecution. And, most pertinently, the truth about the paternity of my sons. Cassandra's public pronouncement, her cruel, calculated lie about David and Michael's true parentage, was not a spur-of-the-moment outburst. It was a premeditated strike designed to wound, to disorient, to seize emotional and legal leverage in the ongoing and increasingly acrimonious divorce proceedings I had initiated. She believed it was her ace in the hole, her ultimate weapon against me. She had no idea that I, her loser husband, had already obtained irrefutable, scientifically validated, and legally admissible DNA evidence proving, beyond any shadow of a doubt, that David and Michael were, in fact, my sons. My sons. My blood. My legacy. I looked at Cassandra, her face flushed with the temporary triumph of her public cruelty. I looked at my sons, their small faces etched with a pain that was almost unbearable. And then, I reached into the inside pocket of my impeccably tailored suit jacket, the one I had chosen for this family celebration, and withdrew not a handkerchief, not a weapon, but a small, unassuming, cream-colored envelope. An envelope that, I knew, contained the immutable, unassailable truth. "Cassandra," I said, my voice calm, precise, resonating with a quiet authority that seemed to cut through the stunned silence of the reception hall. "You are quite right. 49 years old is indeed a time for honesty. And, speaking of honesty, there is a small matter of biological fact that I believe requires immediate clarification. A clarification that will, I assure you, prove to be profoundly illuminating for everyone present." I then, with a slow, deliberate movement, opened the envelope. The paper inside, crisply white, bore the official seal of a renowned international genetic testing laboratory. The truth, the scientific, undeniable truth, was about to be presented, not in a private legal document, but in a rather more public, and for Cassandra, considerably more devastating forum. The loser, the boring physicist, was about to demonstrate that the most powerful equations are not always solved on a blackboard, but sometimes on the grand and rather unforgiving stage of human deceit. And the outcome, I knew, would be catastrophic. For her, not for me. The silence that followed my pronouncement about the biological fact was absolute, a profound hush that seemed to suck all the air from the crowded reception hall. Cassandra stared at the cream-colored envelope in my hand, as if it were a venomous snake, her earlier smug triumph rapidly dissolving into a mask of dawning, horrified comprehension. She knew me well enough to know that I rarely engaged in idle threats or empty theatrics. If I said I had a clarification to make, particularly one involving biological fact, then I undoubtedly did. Her partner in crime, Julian Thorne, who had been hovering discreetly at the edge of the crowd, his own presence at the reception a testament to his audacity, suddenly went very, very still. My two sons, David and Michael, stood beside me, their faces pale, their eyes wide with a mixture of confusion and a nascent, terrifying understanding. I looked at them, then back at Cassandra, my heart aching with a fierce, protective love that transcended any personal pain. My objective was not just to expose her. It was to protect them, to spare them from the insidious poison of her lies. What is that, Thomas?" Cassandra stammered, her voice a reedy whisper, her gaze fixed on the envelope. "What do you think you're doing?" "I am doing, Cassandra," I replied, my voice calm, precise, resonating with a quiet authority that seemed to fill the suddenly silent hall, what any responsible father would do when faced with a malicious, unfounded, and deeply damaging assault on his children's identities and his own integrity. "I am presenting the truth, the unvarnished, empirically verifiable, and legally admissible truth." I then slowly, deliberately, withdrew a single sheet of paper from the envelope. It bore the official letterhead of Helix Genetics International, one of the world's most reputable genetic testing laboratories. My gaze swept over the stunned, silent faces of the assembled guests, Cassandra's family, our mutual friends, my professional acquaintances, before finally, and with unwavering intent, settling on Cassandra. This document, I announced, my voice clear and steady, is a certified, court-admissible report detailing the results of a comprehensive DNA paternity analysis. Samples were taken, with full legal consent, from myself, Mr. Thomas Albright, and from our two sons, David and Michael Albright. A collective gasp rippled through the hall. Cassandra's face, which had been pale, now went a ghastly, mottled white. Julian Thorne, from the corner of my eye, seemed to visibly shrink. My parents, Arthur and Beatrice, who had been sitting at a nearby table, their expressions a familiar mixture of disapproval at the public display and vague curiosity, now looked utterly bewildered. My brother, Richard, stood frozen, a champagne flute halfway to his lips. And the conclusion, Cassandra, I continued, my gaze fixed on hers, my voice dropping to a low, cold, and utterly devastating precision, is unequivocal. The probability of my paternity for both David Albright, age 14, and Michael Albright, age 11, is determined to be 99.9999%. I paused, allowing the full, crushing weight of that scientific certainty to land. In short, Cassandra, I concluded, my voice now devoid of any emotion save a profound, weary finality. The undeniable, irrefutable, and scientifically verified truth is this. David and Michael are, in fact, my sons. My blood, my legacy. You, it seems, were simply lying. The impact was immediate and utterly devastating. Cassandra let out a choked cry, a raw, primal sound of disbelief and terror. Her carefully constructed facade of casual indifference, of smug triumph, shattered completely, replaced by a mask of public humiliation and stark, unadulterated shame. She turned to me, her eyes wide, pleading, but I met her gaze with an unyielding, unforgiving coldness. Julian Thorne, seeing the catastrophic implosion of his accomplice and the public destruction of his carefully cultivated image, made a swift, if not entirely graceful, exit, pushing his way through the stunned crowd with a desperate urgency, clearly hoping to melt into the anonymity of the city streets before the full weight of the ensuing scandal could envelop him. I watched him go, a thin, almost imperceptible smile touching my lips. Let him run. His day of reckoning, I knew, was also rapidly approaching, a reckoning that would involve not just public humiliation, but far more tangible and far more legally binding consequences. My father, Arthur, who had been a silent, stunned witness to this entire, brutal spectacle, suddenly stood up, his face a mask of thunderous rage. But his rage, for once, was not directed at me. It was directed at Cassandra. You lied? He boomed, his voice echoing through the stunned silence of the hall. You lied about my grandsons? You dare to question their blood? You dare to question my son's paternity? His face was mottled purple, his fists clenched. Beatrice, my mother, looked utterly horrified, clutching her pearls. Richard, my brother, stared at Cassandra with a look of disgusted disbelief. The moral outrage, it seemed, was contagious. Cassandra crumpled, her earlier defiance utterly extinguished. She fell to her knees, weeping, harsh, racking sobs that shook her entire body, her face buried in her hands, exposed, humiliated, and utterly, irrevocably defeated. I walked over to David and Michael, putting my arms around them, holding them close. Their small bodies, which had been rigid with tension, slowly began to relax against me. It's okay, boys, I murmured, my voice thick with emotion. It's all okay now. The truth is out. And you, I said, looking at each of them in turn, my voice filled with an unwavering love that needed no scientific validation. You are my sons. My precious, wonderful sons. And nothing, no one, can ever take that away from us. the wedding reception, my 40th birthday party, had been transformed into a very different kind of celebration. It was a celebration of truth, a celebration of family, a celebration of an unassailable bond, fiercely defended, and now, publicly and definitively, affirmed. The loser, the boring physicist, had just solved his most complex equation, and the answer, the one etched in the very DNA of his children, was one of profound and enduring triumph. The aftermath of Cassandra's public unmasking at the wedding reception was, from my detached perspective, a masterclass in the rapid, comprehensive unraveling of a carefully constructed illusion. Her initial hysterical sobs quickly morphed into a torrent of incoherent accusations directed at me, at Julian Thorne, her absent lover, and even, bizarrely, at the universe itself for conspiring against her. Her own family, initially stunned by her shocking declaration and the ensuing refutation, quickly rallied not to her defense, but to their own social self-preservation. Gregory, her father, a man whose primary concern had always been appearances, furiously denounced her actions as monstrous, unforgivable, and a stain on the family name. Beatrice, her mother, dissolved into a puddle of genuine, if self-pitying, despair, lamenting the public humiliation this would cause them. Her brother-in-law, Richard, and his wife, Cynthia, ostentatiously distanced themselves from her, their expressions a mixture of moral outrage and a clear, almost palpable, relief that they were not directly implicated in her spectacular downfall. Julian Thorne, as I had anticipated, made a hasty, ignominious exit from the reception hall, vanishing into the night. His true ordeal, I knew, was yet to begin. My immediate priority, however, was my sons, David and Michael. I quickly escorted them from the reception, shielding them as much as possible from the chaos and the whispers, my heart aching for the pain they had been so cruelly subjected to. We drove to a quiet, anonymous hotel, a sanctuary from the storm. There, in the privacy of our room, with the DNA report carefully placed on the bedside table, I began the difficult but necessary process of rebuilding their world, piece by painstaking piece. I hugged them tightly, repeatedly, reassuring them of my unwavering love, of their secure place in our family, of the undeniable truth of their paternity. We talked for hours, I answering their questions honestly, gently, without malice or recrimination against Cassandra, simply stating the facts as I knew them, as science had confirmed them. The pain was immense for all of us, but in that shared vulnerability, a new, deeper, and more honest bond was forged, a bond that transcended any biological or legal definition. The next day, I contacted Alastair Finch, my solicitor. Alastair, who had remained at the reception to manage the legal fallout and, I suspect, to simply enjoy the spectacle, was in his element. He had already begun the process of formally filing for divorce, now on grounds of adultery, fraud, and emotional abuse, citing Cassandra's paternity lies and her financial misappropriations as irrefutable evidence. The battle for my children, for my name, for my integrity had truly begun. The legal proceedings were protracted, brutal, and utterly comprehensive. Cassandra, stripped of her lies and her leverage, fought with a desperate, self-destructive fury, but her case crumbled under the weight of the evidence. Alastair, armed with the DNA report, the financial records, the affidavits from her former clients, who, emboldened by the public exposure, now came forward with their own stories of being defrauded by Julian Thorne, and my own unwavering testimony systematically dismantled every one of her claims. Julian Thorne, her partner in crime, became a key figure in the ensuing legal maelstrom. His name, already tainted by his involvement in Cassandra's public humiliation, was now front and center in a series of far more serious and entirely justified fraud investigations. Several of his former clients, after being approached by Alastair's forensic team, came forward with their own damning evidence of his predatory schemes. He was eventually arrested, indicted, and after a lengthy trial that laid bare the full extent of his deceit, sentenced to a significant prison term. Justice, it seemed, even for the most charming and elusive of predators, had a long, if often delayed, reach. Cassandra's divorce settlement was minimal, a sum barely enough to cover her mounting legal fees. Her reputation was in tatters. Her social circle evaporated. Her dreams of a life of effortless affluence utterly shattered. She vanished from the city, a cautionary tale whispered in the hushed tones of polite society, a chilling reminder of the destructive power of unchecked ambition and profound moral bankruptcy. My sons, David and Michael, thrived under my sole custody. We rebuilt our lives, piece by painstaking piece, on a new, unshakable foundation of honesty, trust, and unwavering love. They excelled in school, pursued their passions, David, a quiet love for classical literature, Michael, a burgeoning talent in robotics, and grew into remarkable young men. Their early trauma slowly fading into a distant, if poignant, memory. The silence from Cassandra, the absence of her toxic presence, was a gift, a profound and lasting peace that allowed us to flourish. My own career as a theoretical physicist continued to be a source of deep satisfaction. I immersed myself in my research, finding solace and profound meaning in the elegant certainties of the cosmos, a universe of fixed laws and discoverable truths, so different from the messy, irrational chaos of my recent personal life. The loser, the boring physicist had, it seemed, solved his most complex equation. And the solution, the one that resonated through every aspect of his life, was one of quiet, hard-won triumph. The years that followed were a testament to the quiet, enduring strength of a life rebuilt on solid ground. My sons, David and Michael, grew into remarkable young men, their early trauma a distant memory, replaced by the vibrant realities of their own bright futures. David, thoughtful and deeply empathetic, pursued a career in medicine, his gentle nature and sharp intellect, making him a gifted and compassionate physician. Michael, energetic and endlessly curious, followed in my scientific footsteps, becoming a brilliant engineer, his work in robotics contributing to groundbreaking advancements in prosthetic technology. They were in every sense of the word my pride, my joy, and my living legacy. Cassandra, their mother, faded into the background of our lives. Her legal and social standing irrevocably shattered. Her financial prospects extinguished. She lived out her years in quiet obscurity, a cautionary tale whispered in hushed tones by those who remembered her former ambition and her spectacular fall. I felt no triumph in her decline, only a lingering sense of profound sadness for the waste, for the life that could have been, for the choices that had so tragically and so comprehensively destroyed her. Julian Thorne, her former lover and co-conspirator, remained in prison, his sentence a stark, tangible reminder of the real-world consequences of his fraudulent schemes. Justice, it seemed, had a long, if often slow, reach. My own life, free from the constant undercurrent of conflict and emotional manipulation, found a deep and abiding peace. My work in theoretical physics, the elegant pursuit of universal truths, became more than just a profession. It became a meditative practice, a sanctuary of pure reason and profound discovery. I cultivated new friendships, pursued quiet hobbies, and found a comfortable, fulfilling companionship with a woman named Dr. Alistair Vance, a brilliant and kind astrophysicist whom I met at a conference. She understood my world, my passions, my quiet intensity, and she valued me for who I was, not for what I had or had been. Our bond was one of mutual respect, shared intellectual curiosity, and a deep, quiet affection that needed no grand pronouncements. One cool autumn afternoon, many years after the public unmasking at the wedding reception, I was in my study, surrounded by my books, my research, and the hum of my computers, when David, my elder son, then a resident at a major city hospital, called. His voice was subdued. "Dad," he said, "I was wondering if you could meet me for coffee. There's something I need to talk to you about." I agreed, my mind already sifting through the variables, assessing the potential outcomes. He arrived looking tired, lines of stress etched around his eyes. He sat down, took a deep breath, and then, his voice quiet, almost hesitant, he began to speak of a new project he had become involved with at the hospital. "It's a pro bono clinic, Dad," he explained, "for families who can't afford genetic testing, to help them understand complex family histories, paternity issues, unexpected medical diagnoses, sometimes just to find answers." He paused, his gaze meeting mine. "And I met a woman there, Dad. Her name is Cassandra. She's a volunteer. She helps with patient intake, provides emotional support. She's different, Dad. Very quiet, very humble, but kind. And I saw her file, Dad. She's my mother." My heart gave a small, almost imperceptible lurch. Cassandra, my ex-wife, now a volunteer at a free clinic, helping families navigate the very complexities she had once so cruelly weaponized. "She looks tired, Dad," David continued, his voice soft. "She's not the person I remember from when I was a kid. She seems genuinely remorseful. And she talks about you, Dad. A lot. She says you were always the real one. The one who understood what truly mattered. She says you were right. About everything." He paused again, then, his voice barely a whisper, he asked, "Dad, do you think people can really change?" I looked at my son, my remarkable son, a man who had chosen to dedicate his life to healing, to understanding, to compassion. And I thought of the long, arduous journey Beatrice had taken, the path of painful self-reflection, of ultimate, if belated, remorse. And I thought of the power of truth, not just to expose, but sometimes to transform. "Yes, David," I said, my voice quiet but firm, "I think people can change. Sometimes it takes a long time, and it often takes hitting rock bottom. But yes, I believe change is always possible." We talked for a long time that afternoon about the past, about the present, about the complex, unpredictable, and ultimately deeply human patterns of life. I never met Cassandra again, but I knew, with a quiet certainty, that a different kind of healing had begun, a healing that extended beyond the courtroom, beyond the pages of a scientific report, into the deeper, more complex, and ultimately more forgiving landscape of the human heart. The loser had not just found his own way. He had, in the end, perhaps, helped to illuminate a path for others, including the woman who had once so cruelly and so publicly denied him. And in that, I found a profound and enduring peace. The final equation of my life was, at last, balanced.